My fellow Ugandans, I was asked to talk about culture. Culture is extremely important. Without it, you are a savage. And anybody that tries to destroy your culture is actually trying to reduce you to a savage. Because God created us, that we can actually go contrary to our instincts. That's why people are able to drink beer. If you give beer to a dog, the first reaction is to run away. You take that beer to that dog again, it runs further. The third time it starts barking. The fourth time, your own dog will bite you if you try to force her to take beer. Because that dog still goes by the instinct. Similarly, male dogs don't run after female dogs anytime, anywhere. They run after a female dog for a particular purpose. That's why they are more disciplined when you talk about sex. But for us who rebel against our instincts, if culture does not stop us, my friend, people would be chasing women everywhere and grabbing them, and nobody would know his children or his father. It would be total confusion. So culture is very important because it's what controls us. And it's different from different places. And you should never laugh at any culture, because I want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable with their own cultures. I'll give you an example. 1965, with the late Omonyo Jog and the now engineer Simba in Kampala, we were given scholarships. We were in senior 3, and were taken to different families in US. I ended up in Portage, Michigan, which is a suburb near Kalamazoo, and it was all white. And the other student there was a white girl from South Africa. So these white families were very kind to us, and they would literally fight to have you over to their houses for dinner. And of course, you had to accept, because you are a diplomat of sort. So I was invited by Dr. Buthara. Dr. Buthara was working for Upjohn Company, which is one of the biggest companies making drugs, human drugs. And he had 4 young daughters. And one of the daughters was about 4 or 5. And these Americans at that time, 1965, they were depending on encyclopedias. So when these kids knew, in fact, they had never had any contact with a black person except seeing them on the streets or on TV. So they are very curious that this black boy is coming to have dinner with them. And they are very thorough, because by the time you get there, they have cooked most of the good food you want. Chicken, beef, that kind of stuff. But these kids go to the encyclopedia and say, this African from Uganda. They look into encyclopedias and see this big anthill. In Michigan, an anthill is a little mold on the ground. Here, what we call it's very tiny. That's no, not in Kurukuku, but very, very tiny. That's what they know for an anthill. So they see this big anthill. Then they are curious. The anthills we know are not this big, but this one is taller than a man. Then what is in it? They read about ants. So they read further, Africans eat ants. So when I go for this young girl, very tactfully asks me, do you have big anthills in Uganda? I said, yes. Do you get any food from those places? I said, yes. Then she asked the final question. Do you eat anthills when they are not cooked? And I said, yes. Because for a Muganda, they are anthills, they are nswa we eat after cooking and drying, but they are nswa and bobia. Those ones that are not, you don't get huge quality eating. So this girl gave me a very terrible expression on her face. He said, yeah, you eat live ants, you grab it, throw it in your mouth, and chew it up. She woke me for the first time, because I grew up 15 miles on Masaka Road. There was Nsimbe, so I knew the Bachiga, the Banankore. We had the Namwabula, so we had other tribes there, among the Alurus. And we used to say as Baganda, they even eat squirrels. For the first time I was taught. Because I agreed. If what you eat puts you lower than human, then for I who eats living insects, I'm much lower than an Aluru who gets his squirrel, skins it, and cooks it well, and eats it. That's a shock. Then the professor is always telling me about time. Culture. The sex I was talking about. If they tell you that in this particular group of people, you have to chase a woman, get her by force, don't you ever think it's primitive? It depends on the environment. Because society, through its culture, practices, and experiences, may decide that in our environment, anybody physically weak cannot survive. So they limit what kind of young people will come into that society and say, if you're not strong enough to take her by force, you have no business getting a child. In other societies, actually they castrate people. They inject them with needles as a matter of government policy. The moment you are born with defects, they inject you so that you cannot bring another person in the world. That would be in the most civilized countries in the world. So you don't laugh at those cultures. And incidentally, you cannot laugh at those cultures because I'll give you an example. The day Prince Charles married Diana, I was in the States, we saw the pictures, really wonderful, as you saw the new princess getting married recently. And then Johnny Carson, who was a very, very intellectual person, discussing very serious international issues, he used to start his talk shows with jokes. So the day of Diana and Prince Charles' marriage, Johnny Carson comes on and he says, the most recent news we are getting from London, Diana is struggling to pull Prince Charles into the bed, but Prince Charles keeps falling down. And we laughed. And by the way, you had to laugh if you knew that whenever Prince Charles tries to ride a horse, he tends to fall down. Their culture dictates who you marry, and they get what they deserve. So I said, I'm so grateful. My culture of the Baganda was to go to Bunyoro and capture women. They used to go to Usoga and capture women. Because one they knew that if you intermarry very close, the future is not good. But if you get a Bunyoro woman, a Musoga woman, in their culture, the priority was not getting tall. Because if it were that, then the Batus would have got the hit. Or my brothers, they are surely. Because they would go for those women who are tall so that they make their race tall. So whatever is done in culture has a purpose. There are secret ingredients involved, which you, the outsider, does not have to appreciate, but those that are members of that community definitely do appreciate. 1 minute. To finish it off, everybody should be very proud of his own culture. They are extremely valuable. What you don't want to associate with, you don't associate with. The Bagisu in Entebbe come when their time comes for Mbaru. I never bother them. They never bother me. They live and I live. Culture is God-given in a way because it makes you survive where you have to survive. Thank you very much. The time is over.
Thank you very much, to Dr. Ndebesa.
Thank you, Chair. I hope Dr. Kukina will also live Banyankwere as they are. So since he has said we should live each group in its own culture, namely the Obugabe, but that's not my topic. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I must apologize. Last night I had a sore throat, and I don't know whether I will finish my talk, but let me see what I can do. By way of introduction, they had Mr. Tumwine had said I'm from the soil Yes, although I teach history and development studies at Makerere University, I'm from Ruhama in Intungamo. So I'm from around. If you should wave, don't think that the Nyankore squeezes my mouth. My topic was public resources and the mainly public resources. But I was tickled by history. Mr. Chairman will give me a minute to talk about history, just in one paragraph, in one sentence or so. History can be abused. History can be selective. So for that matter, be careful when you are listening to history. It can be used selectively. But to use a popular language so that we can all move together, maybe we're going to use the language of theology and say that in Uganda, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, and they need repentance. So I don't want anybody to blame one and leave out the other. As a historian, I can tell you the problems of Mengo, and I can tell you the problems of UPC, and I can tell you the problems of Idi Amin, as well as those of Museveni. So, as citizens, now I'm using citizenship not to refer to belonging to a country as a right, but as a right to engage in public affairs. So we need to be citizens, not subjects. As one philosopher put it, said, the worst that can happen to a country or a people is for good people to do nothing. So if you think you are good people and you are doing nothing, you are doing a disservice to this community and this country. And I would have emphasized it, but this thought has incapacitated me. Let me go back to the topic now of the resource. Defining a resource is anything that can be utilized by a person, or it is a source. A resource is a source that can be used by a person that will benefit him or the community. That is the resource now. And there are different types of resources. We have natural resources, we have human resources, financial resources, physical, cultural resources, physical resources, etc. So when I'm talking about resource, in this time I don't mean only the natural resources. Now, my topic will emphasize the challenge of access to public resources, because I don't have time. Otherwise, I could have talked about management of resources and climate change or whatever. But I'm going to talk about the challenge of access to public resources in Uganda. And I'm not referring to only one regime, because by then I will be selective. All regimes have created challenges to accessing public resources. Now, when you talk about natural resources as public resources, you have land, minerals, forests, rivers, lakes, the sun, the wetlands, etc. But since they are public resources, have we had the opportunity to have equal opportunity to access these resources? My answer is no. And therein lies the crisis in Uganda since independence. You go to any town here, Mbarara, Bushenyi, Tungamo, Ishaka, Kunjiri, and you look at the plots, you find that the person in the office in charge of allocating plots allocates those plots to people from his home area. That is a problem, and we need to address that problem. We go to public service jobs as a resource also. Ministries, parastatals, security organs, recruitment and promotion. You get embarrassed. You go to a high-rise building housing a certain parastatal, and you can tell who is the head or where the head of that parastatal comes from. How do you tell? You look at the secretary, look at the messenger, the tigger, the security officer. You can tell who is on the 8th floor. Why? Sectarianism. And that is a problem. And unless we address that one, we shall not build this nation. How do we access state house scholarships, for example? How? Who accesses them and who doesn't? And how? We don't know. Who is promoted and who is demoted? It depends where you come from. Who is recruited? Mwana wani. That is the problem which we need to address in respect of equitable distribution of public resources, because they are public financial resources. I'm talking about public financial resources. If it is private, that is your business. But who accesses agricultural loans in Uganda? Every budget I hear there is 30 billion or 300 billion allocated to agriculture for people to access those loans. Tell me how many of you have accessed it? Where does that money go? You hear that the World Bank brought into Uganda a lot of money in billions of dollars, and it was put in the Bank of Uganda for Ugandans to access as loans and invest in social services like hospitals and schools. What do you see? The next day you find somebody having 10 schools and a magnificent hospital somewhere. See, but where did this person get money? They tell you he accessed World Bank money that was loaned to Uganda for Ugandans to access to construct social services. See, but I didn't see it in the newspapers. They say you don't know. You have no connections. Therefore, that's why you don't know how people accessed it. If that is the case, and we continue like that, then building a nation in the next 50 years will be a futile exercise. Who accesses SACCO's money? They first ask you, where did you put your vote? Whom did you support? Nuts. Who is going to get pigs? Who is going to get sometimes sick pigs and sick goats? But still, who accesses them? Did he vote correctly? And it's not only for this regime, mind you. That's why I don't want to be selective, because at least I was at Makerere in the UPC regime in the 1980s, and after every end of a year, then the UPC would list people who are going to get jobs. Said, but Makerere is not for UPC only; it is for other people. Even if you go to the local governments in the past, I am from Ruhama. When I look around during the cultural kingdom, cultural is a resource. I've never seen a Saza chief who came from Ruhama. Never. A Gombra chief. Those who come from there, you can't tell. There was none. No askari, no magistrate. Hardly, no headmaster, no nothing. Now you're telling me to support the Uganda? Why did it exclude me? Why did it exclude my father? I am now questioning it. Unless you accept that there was exclusion of people in distributing public resources, and then we can negotiate. But if you say we are going to begin from where we ended, I will say you'll wait until we end further. Tenders. Who receives tenders? You local government. Who accesses tenders? These are public resources. Tenders. You fight over tenders. You find somebody, a certain Mwebesa, is the one who has won a tender, but if you go behind, it is a councillor. It is the LC5 chairman. It is the speaker who has access to those resources. And we don't have equitable means of accessing those resources. Unless we do that, we shall continue fighting until further notice. Privatization. We privatize the public resources constructed on public funds, including UCB, which used to be the African Credit Bank, put up by the British in 1950s to enable Africans access loans. Now it is Tambik. It is accessed by only the rich. Where are the poor? Who are the citizens who access those public resources? Mr. Chairman, let me tell these people where things went wrong when it came to distribution of public resources, including cultural resources, as I had mentioned before. So, since I'm caught up by time, I will only mention that now we have discovered the strategic mineral, oil, in your fire next time. Who is going to access those funds? Who is going even to supply tender for supplying food? It may not be Banyoro, it will be people from Kampala. There are cows which have got sensors. They will walk all the way from the Tanzanian border. When they reach where oil is, they will know that it is there. That's why they will stop. Why do cows have sensors in their feet? They eat oil. It shows that there is somebody who knew that there was oil in a certain place. And when cows come, they will sense that there is oil there. They will stop. Unless we design methods and means of resolving the question of accessing public resources, then we shall not build a nation in the next 50 years. The way forward. I would have given you more examples, but the chairman says I have no more time. The way forward. I could suggest more, but let me suggest one. Many of you talked about citizenship. The type of citizenship I'm talking about is not the one you are talking about. Citizenship has two definitions. There is citizenship, which refers to having the rights to belong to a certain territorial unity, like Uganda. That's one. Another citizenship refers to the capability and right to participate in public affairs. That's another definition of citizenship. So you can talk about youth citizenship, women citizenship, Banyankore citizenship, Baganda citizenship, meaning being allowed the opportunity to participate in the public space. And the public space in Uganda has been narrow. Me and Professor Nyango here, we used to have even an organization whose aim was to open the political public space. You as citizens now demand to have a share and a say in the public space. Ugandans, when you hear they are corrupt or they are this or that, it's not because you are born like that. Even Europeans, British, Americans, Japanese, who are in power, would also like to do like Ugandan politicians do. Where is the difference? It is not in their innate behaviors. It is that the citizens will demand vertical accountability, and because you know that they will demand it, you will not misuse and abuse your authority. From now, fellow citizens both see in right to belong and citizenship in terms of public, demanding for public rights. Are you from here going to demand your public rights, your right to participate in public affairs? Are you good people? What do good people do? The worst that has happened to a society or to people, as one philosopher put it, is for good people to do nothing. Are you going to do nothing? If you claim to be good people, are you going to do nothing? What are you going to do from tomorrow? I thank you, Mr. Chairman.